in me. 'Cause I could be the rain in your desert sky. I could be the fire in your darkest night. I could be your curse or your angel. It's all in how you love me.
Hi stars, my name is Galaxia and welcome to the dark of the deep. I think it's something about ocean or something because that was playing the squid on the screen, of course. And it's another creepypasta. I wanted to do at least two. You're probably like, why are you wearing the same clothes? I'm not. Different pants. I just like this shirt. Don't look at me that way. First of all, I brought my candle for this again. I know y'all can't smell it, but that smells good. It smells like fresh apples. And I don't know. I just like bringing candles for this kind of occasion because you know it's creepypasta. You gotta bring something to gloom it up. Let's continue. That other story that we did last time really got to me because I actually liked that TV show and that kind of ruined it for me. Just like that one video that I did with the Lion King, which, you know, you should watch it. You know, honest trailers, Lion King, reaction video, Galaxia. Y'all know what I'm talking to. I got 98 subscribers, in which I will be doing a special video 100 with my 100 subscribers if I ever get 100 subscribers. Honestly, I didn't know I would make it this far. Honestly, I thought I would just end up with 10 by now. If y'all want me to do a special video or challenge, put that in the comments down below. I can't even speak words today. I will be putting Tatiana's channel in the description down below with my little sister's channel. Let's go and do this.
The pod hit the surface of the ocean with a thump, sending a wall of white water high into the air and splattering the onlookers with a cold shower of droplets. Dr. Hunter could just about hear the muffled cheers and claps of the people on board the Katiana. He made his final checks to make sure everything was in order and that the airlocks were functioning, and then began his descent. He took one last glance at the Katiana and his fellow colleagues on the deck before being swallowed by the ocean. He had waited a long time for this moment. Hours of research and struggling to convince the committee for research funding. He had spent 18 months preparing everything needed for the voyage, struggling to convince the committee for research funding. He had spent 18 months preparing everything needed for the voyage, from locating the best spot for the dive to putting together a crew for the boat. It wasn't a cheap project, but if all went to plan, he would become one of the first people to see the infamous giant squid in its natural habitat. Just then, a voice crackled through the intercom. "Everything all right down there, Dr. Hunter?" said the voice. "Yes, everything seems to be working as planned, Captain. How are things on the surface?"
Okay, I know what this is going to turn out. This is going to turn out to be a normal thing. And then something tragic is going to happen or something. Somebody's going to die. I mean, what is up with you people and trying to go to the deepest, darkest part of the oceans? They're called the deepest, darkest parts for the reasons. We don't go there. Stop being curious. Obviously, something doesn't want us there. If it's that dark.
"Oh yes, very good. Sun's shining and sea's not too choppy. We couldn't have picked a better day," the captain exclaimed. Captain Takahashi was a short man in his 60s. He had grown up in a seaside town in Japan and became a professor in marine biology later in life. He was a friendly man and had jumped at the chance to be a part of the project. He and his men worked long and hard to make this whole thing possible. "Excellent news," replied Dr. Hunter. "Could you put Tabitha on?"
No.
Tabitha was a PhD student who had worked with Dr. Hunter on his project from the start. She was an excellent student, always enthusiastic and always smiling.
Hopefully she doesn't.
"How's everything going down there, sir?" came a voice from the intercom a few moments later. "Oh, everything seems to be going to plan. I just wanted to thank you again for all your help. I couldn't have done it without you," Dr. Hunter said. "That's great, sir. I hope it's not too scary for you down there," she laughed.
Yep.
"See you in a few hours. If you're lucky, there might be some beers left. Good luck."
If you're lucky, you might be still alive. Good luck.
The pod had descended so far that it started to get dark at this point, and the doctor glanced at the depth meter to his right. The dial read the depth as just past 1,300 meters. The descent continued, and it wasn't long before the only light came from the small flashlights and a small screen displaying the infrared camera views from the front and rear of the pod. All they were displaying at the moment were small specks of debris that will whiz past as the pod dropped ever deeper. A while later, the dial showed the depth hit 2,000 meters and gave a small beep that pierced the silence. Dr. Hunter took his eyes off the camera screen and clicked a switch on the control panel. This opened a small valve on a capsule attached to the rear of the pod, and the contents began to billow out as a creamy cloud. It was made up of
Sorry about that, guys. I felt the need to have some popcorn, so I got some tangerines instead.
blended squid that the giant squid is known to feed on. The hope was that any giant squid in the area would smell this mix and come to investigate.
Nope.
The pod eventually came to a halt at 2,800 meters deep. It was almost pitch black and eerily quiet now. The doctor sat alone in his pod, the only thing connecting him to the rest of the world above the surface being the radio to Katiana.
Was he by
3
himself?
hours had passed, and Dr. Hunter blinked at his watch in shock.
No, he's not, right?
It hadn't felt like 3 hours. His heart had been beating with excitement and anticipation, and the time had flown by. His eyes felt dry from staring at the screen in front of him, waiting for something to appear. He gave a disheartened sigh. He only had 2 hours before the oxygen reserves would start running low, and he would have to make his ascent back up into the light. He was beginning to lose hope of seeing a giant squid in the wild. All this work, all this preparation, for nothing. He dreaded rising to the surface and seeing the disappointed faces of the people aboard the Katiana. He rubbed his eyes. "No," he said aloud into the empty space, shaking his head as he did so. He was not about to give up. He had waited so long for this. He wouldn't get another chance. He focused his gaze back on the screen, praying that something would appear. Just then, the speaker for the radio began to crackle. He looked around at it, listening closely as to try and make out a voice. "Hello?" he said into the radio microphone. "Captain Takahashi, can you hear me?" There was no reply. The radio just continued to crackle. It should be able to. It cost enough, he thought to himself. The crackling began to get louder and louder until it was almost unbearable. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it went silent. He hoped everything was okay on the surface. It was a big risk for him to be down here, and even the smallest fault could mean catastrophe. Dr. Hunter turned back to the screen, feeling slightly unsettled. As he did so, the crackling began to get louder and louder until it was almost unbearable. Feeling slightly unsettled, as he did so, he could have sworn he saw a shape move suddenly out of view.
What?
He leaned closer, his heart pounding with excitement, scanning the darkness for anything of interest. Could this be it? The unsettled feeling in his stomach was gone, the crackling from the radio forgotten about. As he looked, he could have sworn he could see things appearing, then sinking back into the gloomy depths. He rubbed his eyes again and took a sip from his water bottle,
Oh my God.
trying not to take his eyes off the screen. Was he seeing things, he wondered? Then he saw it. In the top right-hand corner of the screen, a shape in the darkness. It seemed to be coming straight toward.
Okay, now, like I said before, I have a creative mind, so I'm watching this and visualizing this all happen, and I'm just like, is he going to die?
The pod, but it didn't look like a giant squid. It looked like... No, it couldn't be, he told himself. His mind was playing tricks on him, surely. He looked out the porthole to see if he could make out anything through the darkness. It was pitch black. He looked back at the screen. The figure was gone. The unsettled feeling was back. He felt sick to his stomach, and sweat drenched him. He didn't care about the squid anymore. He just wanted to be out of this cramped little box and back on dry land in the sunshine, sharing a beer with Tabitha.
He got his instincts.
He turned to the control panel, ready to set the pod for the ascent. He stopped himself. Was he overreacting? Surely he was just imagining things. He couldn't give up now, he thought. That was when he heard it. A gentle scraping on the side of the pod.
That's not gentle.
Dr. Hunter froze, sweating profusely now, staring at the spot where the noise was coming from. Then another noise, even more terrifying than the first. This time, it came from the other side of the pod. 3 short, clear knocks. Shaking, he keyed the code for the ascent into the control panel.
The moment he said 3 clear knocks, somebody just knocked. And I was like,
Nothing happened. He tried again. Still, nothing. The lights behind the keyboard flickered and then went out, dousing the pod in complete, impenetrable darkness. Panicking, the doctor fumbled for a flashlight behind the seat. Switching it on, he shone it at the rear porthole. He scanned the water for any movement. It was completely silent once again. He felt trapped and alone,
that's why you got
like he was lost deep in space. He turned around to shine the torch out of the front porthole. He cried out in terror. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale, greyish, wrinkled hand with long, skeletal fingers. Without even having to think about it, Dr. Hunter pulled the backup power lever, praying it would work. It did. The hand was gone from the porthole now. The doctor wasted no time keying in the code for the ascent. To his relief, it worked. A whirring sound came from the engine of the pod as it began to rise back up to the surface. He was sick onto his lap and the floor in front of him. Tears were streaming out of his eyes.
What?
He almost couldn't bring himself to look at the screen in fear of what he might see. When he finally did, there was nothing to be seen. Dr. Hunter wondered to himself, had he imagined it all? Could it have possibly been brought on by the silence and isolation and the never-ending darkness? He grabbed the radio mic. "Hello, Captain. Are you there? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? There was no response. He tried again. There was still nothing. After some time, it began to get light. The pod was getting closer to the surface. He had been trying the radio non-stop, but there was still no response. He still felt sick, and his hands were still clammy with sweat. The smell of his vomit filled his nose, making him feel even more nauseous. His mind was racing. Was it real? What was it? Was he safe? He knew one thing for sure. If he got out of this, he was never returning to the sea again. He didn't care if people thought he was crazy. Just then, the pod burst through the surface of the water. The sun was now hidden by storm clouds, but it had not begun raining, and the sea was still calm. He looked through the front porthole, and there it was, the Katiana, bobbing gently on the waves, the white hull almost glowing. It was a welcoming sight, and for the first time since beginning the ascent, Dr. Hunter felt safe. But then, as he looked closer, he could see something wasn't right. Where was the crew? They should be eagerly waiting aboard for his return. He could just make out something crimson red running down the side of the pearly white hull. That was when he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock.
He should have went back up or stay in there. It can't get in there. I hope not, because it's knocking. He's probably dead. Who knows? That was pretty. What? God, you don't know. I just imagined. I just saw a guy in my head just full out panicked. A grown man in my head. That's what was popping up in my head. An old grown man in my head crying and like feeling nauseous to the point where he's just freaking out, and then he was so happy to see the boat, and I was like, yes, he survived. And then all he sees is crimson red. That means there was blood everywhere, and 3 knocks on the thing. Next thing you know, why the hell did I go back up? You know, if he stayed down there, all those people died. They were so innocent. I don't think they were innocent. I don't know. Like, they were probably enjoying beers and they all got attacked and killed. And while he was down there, that's why he kept doing the radio and radio and radio. I think that's what set them off, because, you know, once you like do the radio, you're like, why would he try to like go back after hearing all that, like hear static and stuff like that? And probably they're trying to figure out if someone's like on the other end of the radio. And I think that's what probably set them off, to know that he's like down there and to notice that the thing is gone. I don't know. I'm probably thinking way too into this. This story got me looking back. This story got my black sisters going up high. Anyway, I did enjoy this story. It was or if it's real, if it is, I'm so so sorry for that person because he always does stories that I think is real, and it's probably real, and he probably survived, because how will he get this story if he didn't survive? Who knows? Anyway, I want to keep doing stories like this. If y'all guys like it and stuff, I might keep doing stories, reaction times like this. I did it because y'all liked all my other creepypasta stuff, so I was like, why the heck not? My name is Galaxia. So I'll see you guys next time. Twizzlums.
Fire when the strobe hits you.
That's it, Brian?